I do want to thank all of you for coming out. The weather's cooperating more this year than it has in years past. What we wanted to do tonight is to follow pretty much the normal format that we've done in years past. I want to introduce one by one my colleagues on City Council, to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves and to speak for a few minutes about any issue that they want to bring to the public's attention. Then I will deliver the actual State of the City address, which really lays out what I think as mayor are the most important issues that we're going to be dealing with. Not only explaining where we are, how we got here, but then to talk more importantly about what we anticipate in the future and the goals that are going to guide your City Council. So with no further ado, because I know everyone's time is very important, I wanted to bring up my colleagues, and I want to start with the Deputy Mayor, Brooks Compton.
Thank you, Mark. Just a couple brief comments tonight. Just a little bit about, I think we, in the past, so that you have a little bit of knowledge about who the members of council are, generally told us a little bit about ourselves. I'm Brooks Compton. I've been a member of council since 2004, and I'm now serving as the deputy mayor. My wife and boys, we've lived in Centerville for 34 years, and the last 29 years in Rose Estates. My wife Ruth and I have been married for 34 years, and we have 2 boys. Both of went through the Centerville school system. Chris is a graduate of Centerville and Wright State University, and he works here in Centerville. He is the proud parent of twins with his wife Jamie. They're 20 months old, and so that makes Ruth and I grandparents, and we're very proud of both of our twin girls, Kate and Callie. Our younger son, Brett, is also a graduate of Centerville and a graduate of Ohio University, and he is working on his master's degree in sports administration and business administration at Ohio University, and he is the assistant director of media relations for the Ohio University Athletic Department. A little bit of background about me. I grew up in Kettering, had an older brother and a younger sister, and I attended what was then known as Fairmont West High School. I'm a graduate of Ohio Northern University. I have a degree in economics and a JD, or graduated from law school. And my father still lives in Kettering, in the house I grew up in. I'm an attorney with an office in Kettering. I practiced with my dad for many years. And Ruth and I, along with good friends, we own a business here in Centerville up at the Cross Point Center. I just wanted to mention a couple things. We recently had a retreat, and we spent some time talking about many things during the course of the retreat. It was a very good meeting. But I think we all recognize in this year that there are major structural issues that are facing every level of government, including the local level. We know what Governor Kasich has done with an intention to improve the business climate in the state of Ohio, and it's had a significant impact on local governments. We know that there are difficult issues and decisions that we cannot leave for future councils to address. And we really are seeing right now firsthand how the failure to address those issues at the national level is leaving kind of an incredible mess to figure out that really needs to be resolved sooner rather than later. Here in Ohio, I know it's incredible to believe, but we have over 3,000 taxing entities that are all pushing or pulling for some of the taxpayers' hard-earned money. And this pushing and pulling naturally creates some tension between the different governmental entities, from the state to the federal to the local level. And they're all demanding a piece of the taxpayers' money, and it goes without saying that our community is no different. We have that pushing and pulling, and creates a little bit of tension between some of our entities in Centerville and Washington Township. At our retreat, we recognized that the city of Centerville has not placed a tax levy on the ballot in over 32 years, and we have no plans to do so. In fact, as Greg points out to us every year, Greg Horn, our city manager, Centerville has in fact decreased its percentage of real estate taxes, so as of this date, 2013, every other taxing entity in Centerville, being Washington Township, Montgomery County, the Washington Centerville Library, Centerville Schools, and Centerville Washington Park District, each, and I emphasize each of them, collect more from real property taxes than does the city of Centerville. And why is this important? Centerville's policy has been to leave the real estate tax levies to the schools, Washington Township, the library, and the Park District. However, and I think all the rest of us will agree, and those who know, that there's legislation pending in the state, which is State House, which will have a very significant impact on the policy that Centerville has followed for years. And I just want to take just a second, and I know Mark will speak about this also, and probably all the council members will, but House Bill 5 is being promoted in the State House by a couple members of the Ohio House, and this will have a severe impact on the city's ability to maintain control of its city income tax collections under what is falsely promoted as a concept of tax uniformity. It would be better named as tax avoidance, as it allows those that benefit from the services that are provided by municipalities such as Centerville and others around the state to not pay tax to the municipality in which they work and are provided benefits such as roads, police protection, planning services, and things of that sort. Centerville and other municipalities will be severely impacted, and the impact of this legislation will be damaging to the city. I know that there's a Washington Township fire levy, a Washington Township rec levy, and a Centerville school levy on the ballot this May that are all seeking support from the taxpayers. I know that each of those entities will be seeking support for their individual levy, and in all likelihood will speak at public meetings, including Centerville Council and Washington Township, and other public meetings to ask for support of the community for their respective levies. Centerville has no levy on the ballot in May, but we need the support of the community, including those other taxing entities like the townships, the schools, the parks, and the libraries to help us defeat this legislation. None of our community entities operate in a vacuum, and if this devastating legislation is passed, it will in fact have a significant impact on the policies that Centerville has been in existence for many years, including its real estate tax policy, and this will impact all of the other entities in our community. I know we're not on the ballot, and we have not been on the ballot for many years, and you will not have an opportunity to vote up or down on this particular legislation. But it is an important piece of legislation, and I ask you as members of the community and the other taxing entities to recognize that Centerville and other municipalities around the state need your assistance in this matter to knock down this very damaging legislation. I would ask you to contact Jim Butler, who is the state representative for those that live within the city of Centerville, and Terry Blair is the state representative for those that live in Washington Township, and Peggy Lehner, who is our state senator for all those communities. Contact them and point out to them the necessity of defeating this legislation, which will have a very significant impact on the city of Centerville and the other entities in our community, and will impact services at all levels. With that, I appreciate your concern in trying to address that issue, and please feel free. Greg could talk your ear off about this legislation. There's a very good video that the Cable Communications Council has online. I'd encourage you to watch it. And I don't want to belabor the point, but I would encourage you to help us out on this issue. All municipalities throughout the state of Ohio need this help on this particular legislation. With that cheery note, I just want to conclude my remarks and say I have an opportunity to work with some really fine people. Our retreat was an indication of that, where we spent the whole day together with each other, and we enjoy each other's company, and we get a lot done, and we've really really appreciate the opportunity to serve the citizens of Centerville. And I've enjoyed working with Mark immensely. We've been friends for a long time, and he does a super job as the mayor of our city, and Greg Horn is the city manager. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with such fine people and the work that they put out every day. So thank you very much, and I enjoy the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Brooks. Thank you very much. Next, I wanted to bring up Doug Klein, one of my colleagues on council. I'm trying to do this in order of seniority. I think I'm getting this right. So, Paul, I think you're going to be next, just to give you a heads up.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm battling a bit of a cold, so I'm going to be brief tonight, but I did want to tell you a little bit about myself. This year will actually be my 15th year on City Council, and that sounds like a lot, but if Jim Singer were here with his 35 years, it sounds not nearly as impressive. But anyway, it's my 15th year on City Council. I have been employed as a senior vice president and a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley for the past 29 years. That's what I do during my day job, and then we meet here as counsel for our evening jobs. My wife, Elizabeth, is at home recuperating from a broken ankle, so wish her a quick recovery. I really do wish her a very quick recovery. A miraculous recovery is what I'm really thinking about. And we are the proud parents of 5 children. My oldest son is Dan Klein. He's a CHS grad, graduated from Western Kentucky University, and he now works with Fidelity Investments in Jacksonville, Florida. My daughter Stephanie is also a CHS grad, and she is currently a senior at the University of Dayton. She will be receiving her degree in education this May and is currently student teaching in the Miamisburg school system. So if you know of anyone looking for a good elementary school teacher, just let me know, and I'll get you in touch with Stephanie. And then we have 3 younger children, Sarah, who is a 5th grader at Stingley, Molly, who is a 3rd grader at Stingley, and last but not least, Joshua, who is a 1st grader at Primary Village North. So we have a very active life, as you might imagine. I happened to get involved in local government when I applied for and was named to the Planning Commission some 16 years ago. And really the incentive for me to do that was my company was opening a branch in this community, and I felt like I should be involved in it and know what was going on and give back. And it has really been one of the best decisions I ever made, because this has really been just a very rewarding experience for me, not only to work with these fine people that Brooks mentioned, but also to work in this community. And if you're from here, and you've always been from here, I don't think you really appreciate what a unique community it is. I grew up in Beaver Creek, and I can tell you they don't have the pride in their local, and I'm not saying they don't have pride in where they live, but it was different. Centerville is different, and it is really a special place. And I'm just very happy that I've been able to make my home here and raise my family here. So I've been very fortunate in that aspect. In terms of the Planning Commission, one of my responsibilities on council is I serve as the liaison to the Planning Commission, and they have a very difficult job. They're volunteers, unpaid volunteers who have to make difficult decisions that often don't make people happy. And I think what's a good testament to our staff is the fact that if you look at the seniority on our Planning Commission, those people have been on there for quite some time. We have a lot of really vast technical experience on that body, and I'm really proud to work with those gentlemen and lady. As I look forward to 2013, and Mr. Compton brought up a lot of the things that we're dealing with, but from a development standpoint, I'll kind of stay on that thought. We will be reviewing and hopefully approving the cornerstone of Centerville development, which is probably more commonly known to everyone as the Dilly property. And this has been something we've been dealing with in the courts and for 5-6 years now, and we're finally getting to the process where we're getting to plans and designs, and we've been very fortunate in the legal proceedings that have gone our way, and we're ready to take that next step. So we will be devoting a lot of time, energy, and our planning department already has, to ensuring that this is a high-quality development that only enhances our entire community, and especially the eastern part of our community that would surround that area. We also have some other key development taking place in our architectural preservation district, and I call that the downtown district, but we have some great opportunities there to add some really quality businesses, and look forward to seeing that process as that develops this year. Lastly, and I'm just going to kind of touch on Brooks' point, and any of our other public servants here know the environment that we're dealing in from a financial standpoint. And frankly, you know, our entire country has had to deal with a different paradigm from a financial aspect. We're having to do the same or more with less. And we face that as a body. And these past two budgets that we've passed are probably I know in the 15 years that I've been involved, were the most difficult budgets that we've ever had to consider, where we really had to cut programs that you really, you know, you never thought you'd have to do it and you really didn't want to do it, but tough choices have to be made. And as you said, we will, as Mr. Compton said, we are committed not to raising taxes on our citizens, and that means that we need to be ever efficient and use good prioritization on how we're spending our dollars and making do with fewer and fewer resources. Mr. Compton also mentioned the current legislation that's before us, and I don't want people to get the idea that we don't think it's a good idea to have a streamlined process for business owners, and we are in favor of that, and I think there's a piece of legislation that the cities have developed that will accomplish a lot of those things in terms of streamlining it. It'll be a single form, it'll be very pro-business, but it would be much more revenue neutral for the cities. And our problem with the current legislation is it achieves those things, but at the same time it's very destructive from a revenue standpoint to all the municipalities in Ohio, and at a time when we really don't have the luxury of making those types of cutbacks. So I would encourage you, as Mr. Compton, to become involved with that. And before I close tonight, I want to mention a really great friend of mine and a great friend of our community, Mr. Bob Corbin. Bob has taken a fall this recently, a pretty serious fall, and has been in the hospital. And right now he's at Hospice of Dayton. And I spoke with Bob about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and he was in great spirits, very alert, very attentive, and just want to let Bob know how much we love him, what a great member of our community is. And I told him that we will all be praying for him and looking forward to seeing him very soon. I did hear a rumor that there was a gin rummy game in his room last night, and he was the big winner. So it sounds like Bob's back to being Bob a little bit. So with that, wish Bob to get well, and I thank you all for your time and for being here. Thank you.
Just to elaborate, the rumor was that there was wine served at the card game that Bob was involved in. So he is Bob. Next, I'd like to invite up Paul Gresham.
Thank you, Mayor. I too have been battling a cold and trying to get my voice back, so I am going to be extremely brief tonight. I have been on council for going on 15 years. Going on 14 years, I guess. I'm in my 14th year. My wife and I moved to Centerville in 1978 when I took a position as a pediatrician in the community, and I have worked as a pediatrician for almost 35 years in the community. Debbie and I currently live at Yankee Trace, which is our third house in Centerville, and we have been proud to live in Centerville for these many years. We have 2 children, both of whom are graduates of Centerville High School. Our son is currently the controller of a large law firm in Denver, and our daughter is media and public relations director for the Northern Kentucky Independent Health District, which is the health district covering 5 counties in Northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. We are also proud to be the grandparents of 5, and if I could make a recommendation to anybody out there, my recommendation would be to skip being a parent and go right to being a grandparent. It's much more fun. Have been involved as a member of council, have been very involved in the National League of Cities, where I have served as chairman of several committees and have served as a member of various other committees, including the board of the National League of Cities. And I now serve on the advisory council of the National League of Cities and also on the Council for Youth Education and Families of the National League of Cities. And I think I'll end there. My voice is not doing very well, and I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks. Well, John and Belinda, I believe you guys both got elected the same year. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
All right. Well, this makes it a dilemma. But John, if you can wait for a little bit, I'm going to invite Belinda up to be the next speaker, and John will close out here.
Hi, I'm Belinda Kenley, and I'm serving my 6th year on council. It's been such a pleasure to serve our community and get to know so many people and try to help find solutions to some of the problems that we're facing. I worked for many years for Ohio's Attorney General and Auditor of State, and she instilled in me a passion for public service. So it was my choice when I left her service to run for council, and it's been great. I've loved it, loved working with my fellow elected officials as well as the wonderful staff that we have. By day, I'm a Vice President of Energy Optimizers USA, which is an energy conservation firm in Miami County. My primary focus is to help schools and government save money by utilizing energy conservation measures. My husband Robert and I live at Piper Landing. We downsized in the past year and are in a condo, which has worked out really well. I've lived in this community my entire adult life. Grew up in Oakwood as the oldest of 3 children. And my daughter Emily Riddle went all through the Centerville system and is now a teacher in the Olentangy district in Columbus area. Outside of work and council, I'm an active volunteer in numerous organizations and serve as a board member of Prevent Blindness Ohio, Ohio Energy Project, Close at Work, and the Association of Energy Engineers. I had the chance to spend some time on the National League of Cities committees and am currently involved more on a local level with our council as the liaison to the library, which I dearly love and support fully, Kim. And also I'm chair of the Neighborhood Relations Committee. And then also I'm council's liaison to the Arts Commission. I am so proud of what our Arts Commission did most recently, the Saturday night. Art at the Trace was a fabulous event at Yankee Trace that featured about 25 local artists. And there were nearly 300 tickets sold. It was a great event, and I think everyone who attended will agree it was a great exposure to art in our local community. As you leave tonight, be sure and stop and see the most recent display of artwork that just went up today by artist Carol Stoops. We're going to have a reception for her on February 22nd in the evening, and I hope to see some of you there. While I'm talking about the Arts Commission, I'd like to invite anyone who is a city resident to consider getting involved. We're looking for 2 or 3 people who are interested in the arts, who have some time to devote to a pretty active committee. If you're interested, contact Debbie James at the city offices. This past week, I had the chance to attend the Ohio Municipal League legislative luncheon with Greg Horn and Mayor Kingseed, and it gave us a chance to have some FaceTime with our legislators and talk one-on-one with them about our concerns about pending legislation. I have an interest in public policy, and so I hope to continue that effort with Mayor Kingseed and other city officials from around the area to make sure that our interests are represented and that our concerns are heard. I really am grateful for the chance to serve our community. It's a wonderful honor for me, and I look forward to more years of service. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Belinda. Now John Beals.
I won't take long, Mark. I just have a few prepared comments, but I am John Beals and entering my 6th year on council, and my wife Sally and I live on the east side of Centerville and have been there since 1965. And that, to remind you, that's some 3 years before the city changed from a village status to a city status, so quite a while ago. We raised our 3 children there, and each a graduate of Centerville High School, and are now blessed with 3 grandchildren, which we love to visit. My experience has been in civil engineering. I've had a 50-year career in design, and it continues to serve me and the city very well, since much activity of a city involves infrastructure, and of course I'm retired now. I represent our city to the Community Recreation Board, the Historical Society, the Ohio Valley Regional Planning Commission, the City Beautiful Commission, and am a member of Council's Environmental Committee. Our city belongs to the National League of Cities, which has been mentioned here before, where I serve on their Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Policy Committee. It is important that we maintain contact with other cities in our region and across the nation to be aware of other cities' challenges and their solutions. We learn much from each other, and my committee work exposes me to national environmental activities. Our city has demonstrated leadership in the area of environmental sustainability with our new wind and solar energy guidelines, the efficiencies of our new public works building, our LED traffic signals, our hybrid vehicles for staff, our popular farmers market program, our recycling program that gathers some 1,400 tons annually, and our use of environmentally friendly pesticides and fertilizers on city property. Now, for 2012, our recycling tonnage only represented about 16% of the city's waste flow by weight. I'm sure that we can do much more as a community and as a city to increase our tonnage, and especially those materials like paper and newspaper and cardboard cans and bottles, so easy to keep them out of the landfills and make them into recycled materials. Currently, our city is moving ahead to provide a convenient electric power recharge station near the center of town to service the growing number of electrically operated vehicles known as EVs. We are also deeply involved in a Dayton area plan to provide compressed natural gas fueling stations. These would allow governments to convert to CNG, compressed natural gas, for their vehicles. Our initial focus is on waste collection trucks due to their heavy usage and their heavy mileage. And this is not just for Centerville, of course. This is for all the local communities that utilize trash haulers. Every member of council is very supportive of our city's environmental sustainability efforts. And also I'll mention that once each year our council does gather for a Saturday of long-range planning, and we discuss a wide variety of issues facing the city in order to set direction for a strong future. And I also am impressed of how well our council members interact with one another and can develop solutions as a group. Of course, we're supported by a fine city manager and a city staff that provide great leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Well, thank you, John, and thank you all of my colleagues. I really feel blessed that I get an opportunity to work with such incredible people who love the city as much as I do. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I mean, I moved into Centerville in 1985. Joni and I live at Yankee Trace. We've got 2 kids, both who went through the Centerville High School system, and our daughter Laura is in Columbus, where her husband is a school teacher, and our son Dan is getting his degree at Wright State. So we have long connections here, and actually I was raised on a farm up between Piqua and Sydney, so I've lived pretty much my entire life here in the general Miami Valley. I do want to say a few things before I get into the actual remarks. I see City Manager Greg Horn in the back there. He's smiling and looking like, oh God, what's coming? Greg recently passed his 20th anniversary at the city, and I just want to congratulate you, Greg, for all you've done. You've been a tremendous success here at the city, and you have led us very well for 2 decades. So I want to say thank you, and I'd urge everyone to give you a round of applause. I'm also happy to see in the audience one of my predecessors as mayor, Shirley Heinz. Shirley's looking at the ceiling now saying, oh no. But Shirley was the mayor when I was first elected to council back in 1989. And so I learned a tremendous amount with Shirley's leadership. And I know Shirley has stayed very active in the community, and Shirley and Paul, very happy to see you here. So thank you for coming out tonight. And I'm also very happy that my wife Joni is here, since she's actually heard this speech twice already, and she still came out. So I'm not sure if that's loyalty or what, but good to see you again, Joni. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 10th time that I've had the opportunity to give the State of the City address as the mayor. And those 10 years have been very interesting and active in many ways. We've obviously had some ups and downs. But I really do think that we're living right now through one of the most challenging and dangerous times for local government that I've ever experienced. Now, I think the first task of any government is to make sure that it's providing the services the people need while staying within the financial resources that the people have provided. And the present difficulties arise because while the service needs have not changed, there are 2 events which have dramatically impacted the revenues that come into the city. Now, first, of course, is the lingering effect of the recession. The recession began in 2008, and we know that it's still continuing in one form or another. Now, since most of the city's funds come from the local income tax, obviously, if there's slower economic growth, that impacts the revenue coming into the city, which we can then use to provide services. But it is true that Centerville, in fact, as a city, weathered the recession fairly well. Tax revenue was flat from 2007 through 2009, but it did not actually decline the way it did for a lot of communities in Miami Valley. Centerville is very fortunate in that we don't rely on 1 or 2 large businesses. We have a large base of over 700 businesses in the community, and this provides a very solid foundation for economic stability. And since 2009, the revenue coming in through income taxes has slowly increased, and we're hopeful that this will continue. But the second threat to our revenue is more serious, since it's something that to a large extent is out of our control, and when it hits, it's permanent. And what I'm talking about here, of course, is that the state government took a number of drastic steps last year which cut funding to local governments. Now, for Centerville, the state reduction in the local government fund took $300,000 out of our annual budget. The state's elimination of the estate tax took $1.5 million out of our annual budget. Now, I'm not mentioning this to complain. Obviously, nothing's gained by whining, and we have to play the cards that we've been dealt. But I think it is very important to understand the background of why the city and many local jurisdictions are in financial difficulty these days. Now, we know that many local jurisdictions have responded to these recent events by seeking additional tax revenues from their citizens. There are numerous school levies on the ballot, and the cities of Oakwood, West Carrollton, Riverside, and Beaver Creek are all seeking higher local income taxes. In our own Centerville, Washington Township community, the school district, having lost a 5.9 mil levy last November, is going back in May with an even higher 6.9 mil levy request. The township government is putting 2 levies on the ballot in May, a combined renewal and new levy of 4.65 mils for the fire department and 1 levy for 0.7 mils for the recreation center. The total cost to a resident with a $200,000 home in this community, if all 3 of these local levies pass, will be $750 per year. I think it's instructive to repeat something that I said in my State of the City last year, because I think it is apropos of the situation we're in. And last year I said that the city, the township, the schools, the parks, and the library will all have to rely heavily or almost entirely on local dollars going forward. And the new economic situation makes it abundantly or absolutely vital that the local taxing authorities not just hunker down conducting business as usual and assume that voters will continue to pass taxes and to pass new levies whenever asked. At some point, the burden will simply be too great to bear. Now, when I reflect on the defeat of the school levy last fall, I fear that the situation I mentioned last year may be coming to pass. Now, in a perfect world, all of the taxing entities would get together and would jointly discuss how much of a tax burden the community could bear, and they would then allocate the available millage to the appropriate entity. And in a perfect world, the city and the township governments would set up joint economic development districts, which would share income tax proceeds and which would reduce the township's need to continually come back asking for property tax increases. Now, in my opinion, this would be a much better system, a much fairer system, and a system which would put a much more reasonable burden on property owners throughout the community. But of course, we all know that that's not the system which exists today. And so if we can't achieve the broader fix for the entire community, let's focus on what the Centerville government itself is doing to deal with the situation. The city income tax, as many of you know, has been at 1.75% since 1983. It is, in fact, one of the lowest local income taxes in Montgomery County. The city property tax rate of 2.35 mils is also one of the lowest city property tax rates in the county. The city's portion of the property tax bill is so low that a city resident is actually paying more in property tax to the Park District and to the library than to the city. And a city resident with a $200,000 home is paying $350 less per year in property tax than a comparable property in Washington Township. But in spite of all of these problems that we've talked about, and as Mr. Compton mentioned, I am very pleased to announce that the City Council has unanimously decided that we're not going to ask for additional income taxes or property taxes this year. Now, the truth is that no one can guarantee that additional revenue enhancements will never be necessary in the future. For example, many cities do assess homeowners for sidewalk and curb and gutter repairs. Centerville has never done so, and hopefully we won't have to. But the fact is that we may eventually need to at least consider assessing at least a portion of those costs. But our firm belief is that the across-the-board income or property tax increases should be the absolute last resort after everything else has been tried, and only if it becomes impossible to provide the necessary services without the additional revenue. Rather than raising taxes, our intention is to deal with the financial difficulties by tightening our belt and maximizing our efficiency, by doing everything that we reasonably can to encourage private economic development, because growing our way out of this situation is the best solution if we can manage it. And we also need to protect against future state attacks on our funding sources. So let's talk about how we've tightened our belts. The city actually anticipated many years ago that this state funding was in jeopardy. And back in 2000 and 2001, we began to work hard to reduce expenses and to streamline our workforce. Using better technology and spreading work around to fewer people, the city's actually cut the number of city employees from 196 to 162 over the last 10 years. Now, some of this was accomplished by attrition, by not replacing people when they retired, but we also had to lay off some good and valued employees. Now, anyone that's had to do that in your own business knows how difficult and tough that is, because these were good people. But obviously, we take seriously the obligation we have to the public to live within our means. We also took the very painful steps of cutting funding to a number of civic groups, such as the Historic Society, Hither Green Senior Center, and the South Metro Chamber of Commerce. These are great groups that do great work, but we simply can't afford to continue funding at the same level as before. We eliminated the DARE program, which was an anti-drug program focused on grade school students. Again, it was a great program, but it was one that we simply could not continue any further. We delayed some of the road projects that we absolutely know we're going to need, but we delayed them in order to defer expenses. And we also tried to use technology to the maximum extent that we could to increase efficiency. And I think the best example of this is how we now handle trash service. By phasing in a more efficient process, the city reduced the number of trucks and the number of employees needed to provide that service. And this has reduced the annual cost of providing that service by over $300,000 each year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important to focus in a broad view on the fact that the core function of government, the very kernel of why government is here, is to provide police and fire protection and to provide efficient infrastructure, roads and so on. Virtually everything else that the government can do can be provided by the private sector. And some criticize governments for doing so, but the fact is that most governments enter into additional activities which are designed to encourage economic development, to provide recreational opportunities, or to otherwise enhance the quality of life in the community. Now, for example, in our community, there are 3 examples of governments expanding beyond their core functions that come to mind. One is the city's waste collection service. Second is the city's golf course operations at Yankee Trace. And the third is the township's operation of the recreation center. And there are 2 general philosophies that can be followed when a government provides these non-core amenities. Now, one philosophy is to simply have the government provide the service with general tax dollars and to make no real effort to have the users of the service pay a fee which covers the actual cost of operations. And an example of this is that the recreation center was funded by township tax revenue, and the users of the rec center pay fees which cover only 43% of the operation. So the rec center is a great institution and a great place, but the fees that users pay doesn't even come close to covering the cost of providing those services. Now, this approach basically puts the main burden of the cost of that service on the general taxpayers. Now, the other philosophy which the city has adopted is to have those who use the services pay most of the costs, rather than asking the general taxpayers to contribute large annual amounts to cover annual operations. In essence, our goal has been to make the services as self-sufficient and as self-reliant as possible. And we've succeeded in our efforts. The city trash pickup service is fully self-sufficient. Our rates were raised in 2006 after being frozen for almost a decade, and the new rates fully cover the cost of providing the service. We don't have any plans to raise those rates for the foreseeable future. And similarly, the Yankee Trace Golf Course was constructed to provide a community amenity and a place for new residents to live. But it was always the intent to have the vast majority of the cost of operations covered by the fees paid by golfers, diners, and those who use the banquet facilities at the clubhouse. And in fact, the revenue from Yankee Trace has always paid the full costs of the full operational costs of the golf course. It is true that in most years, the city did have to subsidize part of the debt service, part of the principal and interest payments, to repay the cost of construction of the course. But even if you combine the debt service and the operational cost, historically, Yankee Trace revenues have covered about 93% of the total cost of running that operation. Now, the approach the city followed allows the government to provide additional amenities, which enhance the quality of life, but not to put a burden on the general taxpayers. That's the philosophy the city's followed, and frankly, that's one of the reasons that we've been able to keep taxes low, because these enterprise funds, we call them, for the most part, pay for themselves. Now, there is some additional good news on Yankee Trace that I'd like to share with you. When the city developed the Yankee Trace course in the early 1990s, the total debt was $24.5 million. The city's been steadily paying off the debt, and it's now down to a little over $9 million, and we have bonds to finance this. But this year, the city intends to pay down over $5 million in Yankee Trace debt. After 2013, the total debt will be $3.8 million, and we anticipate having the course entirely paid off in approximately 6 years. And since the interest costs will be so much smaller going forward, we anticipate that after 2013, Yankee Trace will run entirely in the black, with all operational and debt repayment costs being covered by the revenue derived from the course. So the bottom line from the city's perspective in dealing with the economic situation is we've cut our expenses, we've made sure that the golf course and the trash service are self-sufficient, and we're generally making sure that our expenditures are in line with what we can actually afford without having to go back and ask people to contribute more. I want to talk a little bit about how we're going about fostering economic growth, because that's part of the part of the goals that we have to accomplish here in order to keep our hands out of the citizens' pockets. In addition to living with our means, we absolutely need to encourage economic growth. Now, we all know, at least we know, I think, I'm not sure they understand this in Washington, that the government cannot create permanent private sector jobs. But the government can take steps to assist the private entrepreneur and to cut red tape and to knock down other barriers to growth. The city manager, the city council, and the economic development office in the city have been working diligently and very hard to support the private sector. We want to encourage the staff of the city to deal with business requests in a proactive manner. What we strive for is that instead of just saying no, we're going to work cooperatively with the business to see if we can meet their needs, while at the same time, and just as important, preserving the city standards and the city rules. We want to get to the place where the business community says that Centerville is the absolute best place to do business in the entire county. And there has been a lot of economic news, even in the depth of recession, that we can celebrate. Miami Valley Hospital South is continuing its expansion. Just in the last 12 months, I've helped cut the ribbon at a new cancer center and a new maternity ward. And Miami Valley Hospital is just an amazing institution. It has grown enormously since they broke ground 6 or 7 years ago, and I think that the expansion is going to continue. That is a huge asset and benefit to the city. The Cornerstone development in eastern Centerville is also getting closer to development, and Mr. Compton referenced this. This is the old Dilly property. That project had been slowed down for many years because of a lawsuit that Sugar Creek Township filed, but the city won a unanimous Supreme Court decision several months ago, completely rejecting the township's claims and adopting the city's position. And hopefully we can at last move forward on this project. When the Dilly property or the Cornerstone development is fully developed, it's going to add hundreds of jobs to the community. It's going to provide services to the entire area, and it will add hundreds of thousands in tax revenue every year to the city coffers, again allowing us to keep the lid on taxes and not raising taxes on our citizens. Another example of the economic development is the new Kroger Marketplace, which is up and running. It's the largest Kroger in the world, and it's here in Centerville, and I think I'm sure most of us have been there. I spend a lot of time and a lot of money there. It's a fantastic place, and we're really thrilled that it's doing so well. There's a lot of increased commercial activity both downtown in the heart of Centerville and also at Crosspoint Center. One thing downtown that I know people have asked about is the Dewey's Pizza. Hopefully, that's been a long time coming. There have been a lot of issues with access behind Town Hall, but hopefully that has been close to being worked out, and we are cautiously optimistic. I'm looking at Mr. Horn here. We are cautiously optimistic that Dewey's will be up and running, or at least the ground will be broken this year. And again, we do think there's a lot of activity downtown, and would encourage you to go and take advantage of that. Graceworks, Lutheran Village, and St. Leonard are providing services to our senior citizens. Both institutions are expanding. We're very happy to have them, and they also provide a great service to our community. And in addition, and people ask me about this from time to time, about the vacant properties in the area, the city staff and the city manager and the economic development director are working tirelessly with private entities to get those places filled. Now, obviously, it takes a long time for a business to make a large-term commitment, but we are conscious of the need to fill those, and we're working around the clock to make it happen. And I also want to say something which, although controversial, I think is important, because one of the things the city has to do to grow its way out of this is to be open to growing its own boundaries. And I'm talking about annexation, which, in spite of what some may say, is not a dirty word, because the fact is that the city is open to owners of vacant properties in neighboring communities who want to join the city through annexation because they want to take advantage of the development opportunities here. We are open to that if the owners of those properties desire to contact the city. Now, the raw numbers reinforce our general sense that the corner has been turned in terms of business growth. In 2010, our revenues from income tax were $11.1 million. Last year, our revenues were at $12.1 million, and we anticipate revenues in 2013 to be $12.5 million. Now, this business growth does not make up for what the state took away, but we are cautiously optimistic that if business expansion continues, we will be able to grow our way out of most or all of the present financial difficulties without having to go back to the voters and seeking additional revenue. One last thing I want to talk about, and Mr. Compton touched on this as well, and that's House Bill 5. This is really nothing more than another potential raid on the city's treasury by the state government. Now, some legislators, and unfortunately including Representative Henney, who represents the area north of us, they're pushing for this so-called tax reform plan, which would, as a practical matter, take another $600,000 each year away from the city budget. Now, the plan supposedly is designed to make uniform the method in which local cities collect local income tax. Now, the fact is, as Mr. Compton mentioned, is that everyone's in favor of increased uniformity as to forms, uniformity as to filing dates, and uniformity as to some of the other methods one could use to collect income taxes. We do want to be business friendly. We want to make it easy for businesses who do business in different jurisdictions. And in fact, the city has worked with other entities to come up with a specific legislative proposal that would accomplish the valid parts of the uniformity push. But the proponents of the bill really are trying to reduce business income taxes by letting businesses set off losses for 5 years against later profits, and by changing other rules relating to tax calculations. Now, everyone likes to reduce taxes, and I think everyone in the city is pro-business. So typically you'd think lowering taxes on businesses is great. But it's not really tax reform if you lower taxes on one group if the inevitable result is that the taxes go up on someone else. At the local level, we actually do the day-to-day work of government. We fix roads, we provide police protection, and we maintain the infrastructure which is necessary for businesses to flourish. What is being proposed is not tax reform. In essence, it's just a shell game which allows some state legislators to pose as reformers while overtaxed city residents are left holding the bag. It's bad legislation. I would agree with Mr. Compton. I'd urge all of you to get in touch with your state senators, your state representatives, let them know what you think about this, and the city is going to do everything we can to influence this legislation to prevent what, again, is a takeaway from the money that we need to provide services to the local community. Well, let me close. I appreciate your attention. And just a few more things before we end. I think to be effective and to be doing the people's business and to be doing their job, a government should not just deal with the immediate issues and should not just be concerned with next week's or next month's headlines. The real task and the thing that's difficult is to look ahead 10 to 20 years to make sure that future residents who live in this community will be able to live in a viable and a prosperous community without a crushing tax burden. It's very easy for political leaders to stick their head in the sand and to ignore long-term obvious problems because dealing with them now might make someone mad or might disrupt the status quo. We actually see this every single day in Washington. And I think if we follow that same path here locally, the overall tax burden in our community is going to be completely unsustainable in the very near future. And it will be impossible to maintain the quality of life that makes this community such an amazing place to live. Now, your city government is trying very hard to take a long-term view. Now, obviously, we can't control everything that happens, but within our own sphere of responsibility, within our own sphere of authority affecting the city itself, we're going to continue to do what we need to do to protect you from higher taxes and to give you the services that you need to maintain our quality of life. Now, in conclusion, it seems clear that we are slowly coming out of the recession. There are clear signs of business growth, and if the state keeps its hand off of our funding resources, I think that everything is going to be well here at the city level. As always, we've got a lot to be grateful for. And I'm absolutely confident that the city is going to flourish and to grow and to prosper. And that when all of us who are on city council now are long gone, we'll leave a city that will be viable, that will be sustainable, and that will be livable at a cost that people can afford. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues and I are very grateful for the opportunity that you've given us. Every single one of us loves this city, and we look forward to serving you. Thank you all very much. Well, we have time for questions and answers, and would be happy to answer anything that anyone might like. Are there any questions, either for me or Mr. Horn or any of my colleagues? Oh, yes, Ms. Keevick.
Mr. Mayor, I live in Washington Township. I've had the opportunity to meet you and work with you and the other council members, and I'm here to commend you for the job you're doing for the citizens of Centerville. And don't take it badly that the room is not packed with Centerville people. That just tells you that they have all the honesty and assurance that you're doing a fine job, and they're there to vote for you. And I commend all of you for a swell job. I wish I lived in Centerville.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. That's very kind. I have to say, I do not hold it against citizens that they don't come out on a dark winter night to listen to the mayor. I think they may have better things to do. But again, I appreciate it. We're happy that we have a relatively large crowd here. There's always room for more. But thank you, Bob. I appreciate those comments. Any other questions from anyone? Oh my gosh, this is an easy crowd. No? No? All right. It just seems like it's too good of an opportunity to pass up. All right. Well, if there are no questions, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I won't disappoint you.
Well, that's good. I was worried. I was looking at you.
I'm just wondering, at the corner up here, Franklin and Maine, there's the little house that I think it used to be the old library or something, maybe.
Franklin and Maine.
Little green house there right on the corner.
Is that the WikiTunes thing, or?
You know what I'm talking about?
By the dentist office, behind there, by the
Yeah. Behind
interior
that.
design.
Yeah. I just wondered, is that owned by somebody, is that?
Greg, do you know what's the deal on that?
Privately owned by Mrs. Williams.
It's privately owned by Mrs. Williams, is what the city. Privately owned, yes.
Just curious.
All right, all right. Any other questions? All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very, very much. We appreciate you coming out. The council is now going to go over and meet at City Hall for a brief work session. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thanks for coming.